This is the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser First Edition, and this is the all-new 2025 Lexus LX 700h Overtrail Edition. Which one of these is the real Land Cruiser? We're going to dig into it right now on Driving Sports TV. This episode of Driving Sports TV is brought to you by Onyx Off-Road. Click the link below to save 20% off your new membership using the code DSTV. The Toyota Land Cruiser is a legend all around the world. The old joke goes, if you want to drive into the middle of nowhere, drive a Land Rover. If you want to get back, you drive a Land Cruiser. So when Toyota announced that for 2024 the Land Cruiser was coming back to North America, but it was going to be based on the light-duty Land Cruiser Prado, there was definitely some concern. In fact, if you read the comments on many of our Land Cruiser videos, people just have to point out the fact that it's not a real Land Cruiser because it's actually a Land Cruiser Prado 250. Clearly not a real Land Cruiser. And while we don't get the Land Cruiser 300, which you can find in other parts of the world, we do get something that is arguably even better. This is the 2025 Lexus LX 700h Overtrail Edition. It's a deluxe, full luxury version of the Land Cruiser 300 with massage seats, up to 3 rows of seating, a powerful engine, and for the first time in more than 30 years, it gets triple lockers. In terms of features, this has a list as long as the Nile and a price to match. This particular LX came without a third row, and it also has the Mark Levinson premium sound upgrade. As you see it here, you're looking at $116,760 US dollars, including destination. That is actually the same price that the Land Cruiser 200 sold here in the US just a few years ago when you adjust for inflation. Under the hood of the LX700H is a twin-turbo 3.5-liter V6 hybrid that produces a peak 457 horsepower and 583 pound-feet of torque. The transmission is a 10-speed direct-shift automatic. The four-wheel drive system is full-time with a lockable center torsion differential and a dual-range transfer case. Of course, it also has the multi-terrain select and crawl control systems. The suspension has hydraulic adjustable height. At its lowest driving setting, you get about 8 inches of clearance. But when needed, it can rise up another 4 inches. In the front, it does get independent suspension. In the back, you get a solid axle with multi-link connections. The approach angle is 23 degrees on the Overtrail trim at standard height. With the suspension fully up, that increases up to 27.4 degrees. And a brief aside about the motor in this LX. Lexus has actually installed in it an alternator and a starter. Now, typically with hybrids, you don't need those two components because the electric motor in the hybrid system can do those functions. However, Lexus wanted ultimate reliability in this vehicle so that in the rare circumstance where the hybrid system should fail, this vehicle can still start and drive, which is pretty incredible. And this is the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser First Edition that we bought for the channel just last year. For 2025, the Land Cruiser is unchanged in the US. The only difference is that they dropped this very expensive First Edition trim. So instead, you can get a 1958 or what they call a Land Cruiser. Being that this is a limited trim only offered for 1 year, it was rather expensive at $77,000 US dollars. Today you can still get a Land Cruiser with the premium package and add similar kit for a price running in the low 70,000s. But you don't have to get all the extras to still enjoy the Land Cruiser experience. Whether you get a 1958 or a premium package, they all have the exact same powertrain. And that is a 2.4-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine combined with an electric motor for a total system output of 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. The transmission here is an 8-speed automatic. Like the LX, full-time 4-wheel drive is standard with a lockable torsion center differential, a rear locker, multi-terrain select, and crawl control systems, in addition to an electronically controlled dual-range transfer case. This First Edition also came with a set of rock rails, steel underbody protection, a roof rack, recovery points, and the sway bar disconnect option. With the stock wheels and tires, approach angle on this First Edition was 32 degrees, pretty good for a family SUV. Departure is 22 degrees and breakover is 23. Since we've upgraded the wheel and tire package on this particular Land Cruiser, all those numbers are slightly improved. The tires we have here are 33-inch Falken Wild Peak AT4W HDs. They are wrapped around 18-inch Toyota OEM Tundra wheels. Let's compare some other measurements. Both of these have the same 112.2-inch wheelbase. The Land Cruiser is 193.8 inches long, 77.9 inches wide, and 76.1 inches tall. Maximum cargo space with all the rows down, you're looking at 82.2 cubic feet. The LX is almost 7 inches longer at 200 inches in length, 1 inch wider, and surprisingly, it's actually a little shorter at 74 inches. That's 2 inches less. So the LX is technically larger than the Land Cruiser, but not by a lot. And outside of massage seats and how many cows were used for the cabin trim, both of these vehicles do have similar features. So what's the difference? One thing that I keep seeing repeated online again and again is that the 300 series is more durable and built to a higher purpose. I actually asked the head engineer for both the Lexus LX and GX that very question just a few months ago. His point was that the GX and the LX are both built to their intended purposes. He would not elaborate. So I guess it's up to me to figure out the difference. And to do that, I'm gonna have to get under each vehicle. Right over here. Okay, what do we have under here? Well, obviously this is a rear solid axle with coil springs and outboard dampers. That's cool. It's an interesting design down here. I could see where they could squeeze a little bit extra fuel tank in, but they wouldn't fit much before it was hitting that rear link. So that, you know, I don't want to excuse them because honestly the 17, slightly larger than 17-gallon tank is really not acceptable, but it is tight under here. Right. Rear diff. Ah, no, this looks like the big one on the back of my Tacoma iForce Max. So this is the larger rear diff, which is not surprising considering this has the hybrid 6 in it. Hydraulic suspension, doesn't have a sway bar. Didn't even think of that. Ooh, and they actually have a full metal piece over the fuel tank. Love, love, love that. I want that. As for the rest of it, it actually looks really similar. Even this rear axle is kind of similar design. Shocks are outboard, just like the other one. Coil springs behind it, same basic design.
I was curious if there was any difference in the frame size. In my mind, more rugged would also mean something larger or more substantial.
About 6.5, right? Ah, 6.5. It's exactly the same.
Of course, I have no idea how much high-grade steel and structural adhesives are used between these two vehicles, but they certainly looked way more similar under the body than I expected. This first edition does have the optional underbody protection, which is rather extensive. The front suspension is fully independent with Tokiko fixed-rate coilover shocks. Underbody protection is pretty good on the LX. The LX700H has fancy hydraulic suspension. Here are the reservoirs mounted to the sides. Where the Land Cruiser has the disconnectable sway bar on the front, tucked behind the axle, on the LX, a fixed bar is placed in front of the half shafts. Obviously, there are some non-insignificant differences here, not just on the outside, but also on the inside of these components. However, the fundamentals of this overall design are pretty much the same between the two vehicles. One thing I love about the Land Cruiser is how quickly you can get into the back through the rear glass. On the Lexus, the glass is fixed, so you have to wait for the electric gate, which is kind of slow. In the back of the Lexus, you get 62.56 cubic feet of cargo capacity. Yes, that is 20 cubic feet less than the Land Cruiser 250. I double-checked these numbers, and according to Toyota's official specifications using SAE measurements, the Land Cruiser is much larger on the inside. Like the Land Cruiser, the Lexus does have high-output AC power and an accessible 12-volt battery that can be used to attach accessories directly. I use it all the time on my Land Cruiser to attach air compressors.
Oh yeah, this is nice. So seating position is good. This material is quite nice, this leather that they have. And down here, I have a very large console that includes both heated and cooled second row, which is excellent. I can also adjust my own climate control. I have USB-C and 12-volt power back here. And then I have vents not just down here, but also up here, whereas the Land Cruiser has them here and the GX has them there. So this is the best of both worlds. Also, the cooler is larger in this one than the cool box of my Land Cruiser, and you can actually open it from the second row, which is really handy. Oh, and then of course I also have privacy screens. Overall, excellent second row. I got tons of legroom. This is where I would be seated if I were driving, 6'1", legs torso proportionate. Over here, also get a fold down armrest with a fancy built-in cup holder.
The second rows are both pretty similar in terms of space for an adult. The one upside on the Lexus is it does have heated and cooled second row seats. Both of them, however, do include climate controls and USB power.
Here we are inside the LX700H, and of course this is a luxurious interior, as you would expect for the money. One thing though that not everybody's going to love is just the sheer size of this center console. It is massive. Now we do have some nice wood materials here, metallics, plastics. Overall, the interior is very nice. The steering wheel feels great. I got paddle shifters built in. Everything feels just phenomenal to the hand. I think just overall, it is a really, really nice interior. However, you got to get over this large console, because if you're a particularly large person, you might have trouble fitting here. I'm 6'1", I weigh probably close to 220 these days, and I feel like I fit comfortably. But I think that anybody larger than myself, well, you're going to have problems in here. It is a compact cabin. And that has been historically true for the Land Cruiser. It's never been one for having a massive, spacious interior. Now, in terms of tech, we do get a digital gauge cluster, which I really like. You can configure it multiple ways. It looks different than what you get in the Land Cruiser, which is not surprising. This is a Lexus, but functionality-wise, it's pretty similar. And then up here, we have basically the identical screen that I get in the Land Cruiser, whereas the GX actually gets a much larger display. Do I love this? I actually do like it. I'm not going to say love. The OS could use some work, and they are going to be coming out with a new one, or at least a significantly updated one in the next year. I don't know if this is going to get reflashed or not, but in terms of what we actually have here, it has navigation, it has music, it has basically all the stuff that you need, including wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And that actually brings me to the sponsor of this video, Onyx Off-Road. With Onyx Off-Road, you have at your fingertips access to trails and routes all over the United States. Not only does it give you trails, it'll also rate them, tell you if they're open or closed. Plus, you can also see user ratings, like how difficult is a trail? Can you take your LX through it? Or is it something that you would, that you want to take something a little less costly through, like a Land Cruiser? Well, Onyx Off-Road gives you all the information that you need. And right now you can save 20% off your new membership with the code DSTV. Also, you can click this QR code or click the link in the description below. Onyx Off-Road has made off-roading so much safer and easier. I don't know what we would do without it. I know there's going to be a lot of questions about this vehicle because it's not just the question of should you buy this versus the Land Cruiser, it's should you buy this versus the GX. And of course the GX 550 Overtrail is basically a Lexus version of the Land Cruiser, but for 2025 it actually gets more ground clearance. They gave it a 1-inch lift, and they also included an air compressor in the trunk, which is a very cool addition. I can imagine they could have charged a lot of extra money for that. Instead, they included it and then just jacked the price up of the GX 550 overall. After crawling under both these vehicles, I am kind of questioning really, like, in what way is a 300 overbuilt compared to a 250. Outside of the suspension, which is of course unique depending on the model, I don't really see a massive difference here. But we'll see what this can do, and maybe that'll change my mind. Let's go ahead and go for a drive. These seats, very comfortable, but I'm not gonna say they're more comfortable than the ones in my Land Cruiser. They feel very similar. The biggest difference here is that on my Land Cruiser First Edition, to adjust the front cushion under my thighs, I have to manually adjust it. This one, it's a push button. Oh yeah, these seats also have massage units, and it is buried in the menu, but they are there. And these ones now have a new feature called Magic Fingers massage units. They are more of a pyramid design, so they kind of poke more, and they give you a deeper massage with using the same amount of force as the older massage seats. So, kind of cool. Seating position is excellent. Seat feels very comfortable. Visibility is quite amazing, actually. The window is a little bit closer to me, and because of that, I can get better visibility over the hood. And then, of course, it just has a really big greenhouse in here, so visibility just simply not an issue. Now, the motor here is, of course, it's quick. It is a hybrid assist twin turbocharged V6. And yeah, it is a fantastic powertrain. It's not going to give you 0 to 60 figures. That'll set your hair on fire. The official number is 6.4 for 0 to 60, which given the amount of horsepower and torque in this thing, you would kind of expect a little bit more. But let's just be honest. Once electric cars started coming out, the whole 0 to 60 bit, it's done. Like, you're not going to beat an electric car. You're just not. That is what they excel at. But this is very good, just like the Land Cruiser, in the whole 30 to 60 range, where you're actually going to be needing power to pass vehicles. And in that regard, this feels fantastic. This has a ton of drive modes, where the Land Cruiser basically has Eco, Sport, and Normal. This has Eco, Comfort, Normal, Sport S Plus. That's going to be the most extreme. It's also going to have the most aggressive throttle. Let's see what we feel here. Whew. I mean, this is a big boy, and it is soft suspension. You are going to feel roll through the corners. It is, you know, because it's not a sports car, and there is going to be roll. There just is. Paddle shifters. Now this does have the 10-speed automatic transmission, which means you have basically a gear for any mood. Oh, I like the feel of those paddle shifters. Very positive feel. Sounds great too. Ooh. I'm sure you can't hear anything outside, but right inside here, it sounds amazing. So right now my eyes are going to the fuel tank, which I'm already down to 91 miles of range. I didn't start full. The fuel tank size on this, the GX, and the Land Cruiser, unacceptably small. This beast has a fuel tank that is 17.9 gallons. True, with a V6 twin turbo hybrid system. That small fuel tank, combined with the EPA rating of 22 miles to the gallon on the highway and 19 in the city, results in not a lot of miles between fill-ups. It's actually worse in the LX than it is in either the GX or the Land Cruiser. And those are already pretty bad. Official numbers on the Land Cruiser are 25 on the highway and 22 in the city. Obviously, once you switch out to proper all-terrain tires, those are going to go down, and with my E-loads on my vehicle, I'm actually seeing closer to 18 pretty frequently on a good day. So if you buy one of these, you are going to be stopping for fuel quite a lot. And that is true of all of these new generation vehicles from Toyota, LX, GX. The GX actually does have a slightly larger fuel tank. They said, oh, it's not a hybrid, so we can give you a slightly larger fuel tank. The fuel tank sizes on this, if this actually legitimately got the EPA numbers all the time when you were driving it, would be acceptable. But the fact is that when you actually drive this vehicle, you know, not like the EPA does, then you're just not getting enough mileage. And that is probably the most overlooked aspect of these new vehicles from Toyota, is that they just don't give them enough range. It's kind of ridiculous that if you spend $120,000 on a rig like this, you're still going to have to carry jerry cans if you're doing an actual adventure. But how many LX owners are going to do an actual adventure? Maybe a second or third owner. First owner, not highly likely. Like all modern Toyotas, this is equipped with the Toyota Safety Sense system. It has adaptive cruise control with lane centering, collision mitigation, blind spot warning, a great surround view camera system. This thing is really loaded in terms of safety, and that's probably not a surprise coming from Toyota. So on the street, I do like driving this vehicle. It feels luxurious, it feels large. It's a little lumbery, but just to complete my trio of L's there, but you know, I do like it for what it is. It's not a do everything, meet everybody's needs kind of vehicle, but if you want a luxurious, large SUV, this will probably meet that need. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the mode select back to normal. No matter which vehicle you pick, be it the Land Cruiser, the LX, or even the GX, these are all based on Toyota's center torsion differential system. Torsion stands for torque sensing. What it does is it'll distribute power back to front as necessary, but it is a full-time four-wheel drive system, and it is a rear bias with a nominal 40-60 split. That's 60% going to the back. That means that it feels rear bias, and you can steer a little bit with the throttle. Add a little throttle, it's going to push you around the corners more than pull you around the corners. If you compare this to something like a Kia Telluride, I know, ridiculous comparison, just go with me here. That is a front bias system that uses a clutch to send power to the back when it's needed. It is not really a full-time system because sometimes it just doesn't put any power back there at all. This is a superior, expensive, and very durable system. And also, when going off-road, we can lock that center diff, and it basically will function like a part-time four-wheel drive system with a full lock in the middle for what is roughly a 50-50 torque split. Right, well, speaking of off-road, let's see how this handles at our off-road course. Okay, let's start with a quick run up a rough road. Does a really good job. Solid work there. I can see myself blazing across Africa in this thing. Heck yeah. So the first most critical part of business is picking which massage I want to run. Centripetal, centrifugal, oh, so many choices. Let's do centrifugal. I'm going to maximum intensity as well. Let's cycle that so that I get a full 20 minutes on it. Excellent. Even though the Land Cruiser is known as a go anywhere kind of vehicle, it's not a rock crawler. That's kind of like not why the Land Cruiser exists. If you want to go crawl rocks, go get a Bronco, go get a Jeep Wrangler. Those are better equipped for that. But this should be able to go pretty much anywhere, so long as that overhang in the front doesn't impede us. Now this does have triple lockers. What that means is that you can lock the center differential, and you can also lock the rear axle, which my Land Cruiser can do, as well as the GX. But this one goes one step further and allows me to lock the front axle. Now that's not something you need to do very often, but when you do, it can be very helpful. First thing I'm going to do is actually put this into 4 low before we go into landslide here. What that will do, oh, I got to put it in neutral. That switches our transfer case, so it's going to give me more of a torque multiplier here. It also engages a lot of other systems. They basically think if you're in 4 low, you probably need to do some stuff and get through some stuff. So it raises the suspension up to H2, turns on my trail cam system here, which is a slightly different version of the surround view camera. There's one more thing I can do. It turns off drive modes, but I can then select to turn on MTS or turn on DAC crawl. DAC is hill descent in 4 high, but in 4 low it turns into crawl control, which is a powered crawl system. So what we're going to start with here is, just for sake of demonstration, I'm going to use crawl control here. Push it into crawl, and what this is going to do is it's going to use both power as well as brakes to maintain a slow, steady pace, and it also will shift power left to right as necessary using a brake shifting, brake vectoring. Now, of course, this is a triple locked vehicle, so I could just put on my lockers, but the wheel braking system can actually be a little bit nicer to use because it's not going to bind up while turning. So if you're kind of going through some tight little corners and stuff, sometimes it's better to use MTS and sometimes it's better to use a locker. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to use crawl control. And then also we can stack commands, so I can pick an MTS system, like let's go ahead and do MTS rock, which will give us limited wheel spin, and then we can actually switch over to crawl, and then it will use crawl with the rock logic. See how that works? So let's go ahead and get this done. Okay, we're gonna dial back crawl control to the slowest setting. I am gonna keep my foot over the brake though, because there's a drop here and I don't want it to just charge off the edge. Using my cameras to see where the ledge is. Now this does not have rock sliders, it just has step boards, and the difference is that step boards are bolted to the body, they're not bolted to the frame. Hopefully we have enough clearance here. Just ease it down. I could just take my foot off the brake and gas, and it'll ease me down as slow as possible. Actually, that's doing a really good job. That is so incredibly slow. Those are parking sensors that are pinging me. I'll have to dig in and turn those off if they become a problem. Okay, we're just crawling through the rocks here. So far, doing really good. Okay, I gotta turn off those parking sensors. Those are super annoying. Hopefully there's a push button here. So here I can turn off blind spot monitoring, parking system, lane. Let's just turn it all off. Turn it all off. We don't need any of that. Okay. Now, back to the adventure. Let's get that front camera on. There we go. And I'm just gonna pick a line here and try to, give it a little bit of a challenge. We have a couple ditches up here that I think will be a fun thing to play with. Being able to add 4 inches of ground clearance is just phenomenal. It really does help get you through pretty much anything. Okay, going through there. Just letting the system do the work here. I don't even have any lockers on yet. This is just MTS and crawl doing the work. See that rear wheel spin at all? If I want to go any faster, I can, of course, move the mode dial up here. But man, just gets us through with no drama. This is such a good system. Right, so now we got the moguls here. Let's see what they can do. Let's move MTS down to auto so we can kind of figure out what it wants to do. Put us back into crawl, and we're just gonna ease forward here and see how this does. We're just moving through now. At some point, we're going to take traction off that wheel and that wheel right here, and it shifts power and just moves us forward. Like no big deal whatsoever. Very nice. Now, one thing we haven't done yet is that when you're off-road, you actually should lock your center diff. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and that'll basically lock power to be equal front to back for the most part. We're going to continue on. Let's see how high of a tilt we can get here. Way up there, probably dig our nose in a little bit maybe. Oh, pretty tilty. But you know, this has so much power and so much capability. It's like not that hard at all. This is something that would actually be quite a challenge for the crossovers that we test, but this vehicle, yeah, just walks through it. Okay, well that was that section. Let's go ahead and hop into the Land Cruiser and see how it handles the same part.
For a trail like this, from behind the wheel, they both felt pretty much the same. Like with the LX, here I am using the same crawl control system to manage power and brakes in the Land Cruiser. And here's something to consider about the height adjustable suspension, which is exclusive to the LX. With its low clearance nose design, even at full height, the Land Cruiser still has a better approach angle. So the advantage of extra clearance really isn't that much of an advantage on the trails. Now granted, the extra height will be more useful in conditions like deep snow, but when you're on a trail, sometimes approach angle is even more important. Now let's get back into the LX700h Overtrail.
So we're continuing on, 4 low, MTS auto, height is 2, and we also have that center diff locked. Continuing on. No problem. Articulation actually appears to be quite excellent in this vehicle. No issues at all so far. Man, this is so tall to be on the ridge. It feels kind of weird. Now we're going to head onto our logging trail. This has a couple more technical aspects to it than the last bit. But again, should be easy for a vehicle like this. Very good to put cameras up here because it's very tight. We got logs, we got sticks, got all sorts of stuff just left over. Okay, we got a steep climb out here. Now at this point I am going to use my lockers and then hopefully we can demonstrate the front locker here. Let's go over a log. I'm going to go hard left, which should be the hard line. Yep, there we go. Nice tilt. I'm actually rubbing my sideboard a little bit. Okay, we got some wheel spin, as you can see. Now, let's just pretend I really don't want any wheel spin here. So I'm going to go ahead and lock my rear, and I'm also going to lock my front. Now, sometimes on Toyotas, you have to actually like jog back and forth a little bit before they lock in. My back is locked. My front is going to lock eventually here. But once it locks, basically any slippage is gone. It just walks up, which is pretty amazing actually. There we go. So the difference between a lock and something like MTS is that MTS waits for the wheel to slip, so there's always going to be some rotation which will dig into the trail. If it's locked, both wheels roll together regardless of traction. So if a wheel is off the ground, it won't spin, it'll just still rotate at the same rate as the other wheel, and the other wheel with grip will get you forward. Very cool. Okay, now let's check clearances over this drop. So let's see, what scratches here? The running boards on my Ranger Raptor, the Tacoma, the Trail Hunter, lots of things rub here. Is this enough of a breakover to avoid it? The hydraulic suspension. It did what it needed to. Gave me that ground clearance, no rubbing. Awesome. Cool. Oh, we did rub the tow hitch on the exit. It's always something. Oh yeah, so when you're locked in the front, it does become difficult to steer. So let's go ahead and disable, they hide them way down here. Disable that front locker. Come on, you can unlock. I'm also going to disable that rear locker. Now you gotta do them in order. That's kind of an annoying but true thing.
A feature that remains exclusive to the LX700h Overtrail and other 300 series Land Cruisers is the Trail Turn Assist feature. First, let's see what a normal turn looks like in this Lexus. It's pretty good because this has a relatively short 112-inch wheelbase. For next level turning, simply enter crawl mode, hit this button on the secondary screen, crank the wheel to the right, and let the LX do the driving. By dragging the inside rear wheel, it's allowing the vehicle to cut a much tighter turning radius. The downside, as you can see here, is that it causes severe trenching on loose surfaces. So this is a feature that is nice to have, but also should be used sparingly. Now let's get back into our Land Cruiser 250 for the final comparison.
So like before, I'm going to lock all the stuff that I can lock once I get into a precarious position. Go for the hard line on the left. Okay, there we go. Precarious position achieved. Great. So at this point, I'm going to lock the rear. Is it going to struggle in the front at all? No, not really. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go over. Unlike the LX, this vehicle has fixed position shocks, and but I do have rock sliders. Yep. No rubbing actually though. That 112-inch wheelbase is actually a pretty good one for stuff like this. Nice. And I rubbed the hitch again. So they both rub in the same spots, get stuck in the same spots. The LX has a front locker. I mean, okay. So if you're going down to the dealer and you're trying to decide on one of these, or you're looking at the GX550 Overtrail, I would say it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. They're basically all the same vehicle with minor differences. When you're on the trail in the middle of nowhere, you're not going to know the difference between either of these. You're just not. I mean, granted, you do have a front locker on this, and that will be useful 1% of the time that you're on a trail, especially trails you're going to take in a $120,000 Lexus. This one, MTS. The brake lockers on the front work very, very well in most conditions. So you combine what these have, you're going to have a hard time finding something they can't get through. If you are tackling trails that are way more difficult than what we did today, well, you should probably actually just go buy a Jeep Wrangler or a Ford Bronco. You'll be much happier. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at these two rock stars. Please like, subscribe, share our videos. Please, we make them for you. I hope you enjoy them, and we'll see you again right here on our next video.